Hello, Daily Dosers. There's something I want to tell you about myself. I am not generally a risk taker. See, I think that I want to be a risk taker sometimes, but when I try to do something outside of my comfort zone, I'll be honest with you, it is still fairly calculated. Because I'm a planner. That's just part of my nature. And so when I think through things, I try and think through every single scenario before I jump in. For example, when my high school friend convinced me that because we were 18, we should get our belly buttons pierced because we didn't need our parents' permission anymore, I thought, sure, okay, I can do that. No one will ever see it. When I have had the opportunity to travel internationally, I've often done that with groups because I know that those leaders of those trips will take care of things, all the logistics, and worry on my behalf about where we go and where we don't go. Even when I purchase things online or anywhere, I'll do research and read reviews before I purchase it so that I make sure the pros outweigh the cons. I am prone sometimes to stay within my safe little bubble of knowing what to expect. I've got some members of my family, however, who are not like me. If you've ever met my husband, Hans, he is not like that. He is more likely to take a risk and see where it might lead, where the adventure might take us. More willing than I am to step outside of a comfort zone. And when I was in high school, I discovered that my dad was also one of those people willing to take risks. I grew up in a small town of Waverly, Iowa, and my sophomore year, our band took a trip to Toronto, Ontario. We loaded up a charter bus, and my dad and another adult were some chaperones that came along with us. And we had a free night one of the evenings we were there after our band had performed in some schools and different places where we could go and choose to go out to eat wherever we wanted to. 90% of my high school classmates who were in this band on this trip with us chose to go to McDonald's or other Americanized restaurants, something that was familiar to them. But see, my dad pulled us aside, a group of my friends and me, and said, hey, let's do something different. For some reason, he suggested taking us to Toronto's Chinatown neighborhood to explore some food that you could not get in Waverly, Iowa. This group of 7 or 8 high school students walked from our hotel to this restaurant, and we did exactly that. We got outside of our comfort zone, tried some foods that we had never even heard of, and had a great time together. And for me, at that stage in my life, that was a risk. I would have never initiated that on my own. We needed this adult to suggest it and walk through it with us. Well, this week on the Daily Dose, we're looking at risk-taking. Because, contrary to popular belief that some people might have about Christianity or about the church, I believe that we have a God who invites us into risk-taking rather than playing it safe. Listen to this story from the Bible from the book of Matthew, chapter 14, about a time when one of Jesus' disciples, Peter, took a risk. Now, you should know that this happens in the Bible after the story we call the feeding of the 5,000, a time where Jesus had a huge crowd of people in front of him, took 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, and turned it into a feast, so that generosity was miraculously provided for all people. Everyone was fed. So following this, we read, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he dismissed the crowds, Jesus went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking out toward them to the sea. But when the disciples saw Jesus walking, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." What if we imagined that those disciples on the boat were like those high school students from a small town in a new big city? People who had maybe been intrigued by the miracles and teachings of Jesus, who had enough trust to follow him through this stage of his ministry, but who still had some questions and some uncertainty. They might say, okay, Jesus, we just witnessed this amazing miracle, and now you've made us get into this boat. Here we are. It's stormy. It's not the nicest, newest boat. And Jesus, to be honest, we're getting a little freaked out here. So then Jesus comes onto the boat in another unbelievable way. Jesus walks on water. And notice how during this uncertain time, Jesus doesn't bark orders from shore or somehow provide messages from the clouds. Jesus comes to those disciples who are afraid. And then we hear another disciple, Peter, who says to Jesus, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So Jesus said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat, started walking on water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and began to sink, crying out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying, "You of little faith, why do you doubt?" When they got in the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." When have you experienced a Peter moment throughout your life? Finding the courage to get into a new boat, one that's not maybe shiny or new, one that has some turbulence. When have you then stepped onto the water saying, "Okay, I'm finally going to get outside of my bubble. I'm going to take that risk," but then had a split second of fear? Found yourself struggling, sinking maybe? In those moments, when we face those risky situations, Jesus reminds us by reaching out his hand that we're not in this alone. So if you're facing a Peter moment today, facing that burning desire to step outside of the boat even when the storms seem likely, remember that you don't have to go at it all by yourself. Jesus says, "Don't doubt, have faith, because with my help on the other side of this storm, you'll grow and even more miracles will take place." Thanks so much for watching the Daily Dose tonight and this week. We'd love to have you subscribe on our YouTube channel so you can get updated when new videos pop up. And we invite you to share this with a friend, invite them to watch along with you. Have a good day.